What is happening, automotive fanatics? It's Peter, your automotive fanatic, coming at you guys with another video. If you are new to my channel, I want to go ahead and welcome you to the Automotive Fanatic. Here I show DIYers like yourself and me how to do basic vehicle maintenance on your car. Now, if you are a returning automotive fanatic, I want to go ahead and thank you for supporting the channel. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers, and in my wildest dreams, I never thought it was even possible with the things that I do. So thank you again for your support. What we are going to tackle today is going to be a brake job on a BMW. I am going to replace the rotors as well as the pads in my X2 M35. The overall job in itself is not complicated, and what we'll go ahead and do is I'm going to break it down to a front rotor and pad swap, and then we're going to go ahead and move into the rear rotor and pad swap. I do want to go ahead and give a huge shout out to Brakenetics. They are the rotor company that I actually chose to put on the vehicle. Now, the beauty of living in Southern California, there are a lot of manufacturers that are here, and Brakenetics, they're actually located in Long Beach, California. I stumbled upon them when I was looking for rotors. The one that I actually chose for my X2, you guys gotta forgive me here, this is going to be a heavy rotor. Now again, this is an OEM quality blank that Brakenetics, they take and they machine. This setup here, or pattern, they call the RS line. They do have several other ones that you can choose from. You can choose cross-drilled if you like. Just for my specific needs and what I like, I just went ahead and went with their RS cut. And we're going to go ahead and replace my factory rotors as well as the pads. Now, before you guys jump into this project, I want to let you know, doing your brakes, it is a dirty job. You've got dust that gets everywhere. It's black, it gets on your fingers, underneath your fingernails and stuff. So it's just a dirty job. So what I did ahead of time, I took off all my wheels. I used a product called Super Clean. I sprayed everything down and I went to town on cleaning my calipers and essentially the entire brake assembly. You can watch the video right over here, and it was just a little therapeutic to kind of go through, make sure that all my calipers were clean. So once I actually dive into the brake job, it's going to be cleaner for me to work on. The other thing that isn't completely necessary, you want to go ahead and get your vehicle up, because you do need to get all your wheels off. You don't have to have all four wheels off, but if you got a lift, awesome. If you don't, you can do one tire or one section at a time, but it's going to take you a little longer. So without further ado, my automotive fanatic family, let's go ahead and dive right in to the X2 and get our rotors and pads swapped out in the vehicle. Now, before you guys start tearing apart the brakes, what you want to do, you normally have a cover, which is this right here. You want to remove it off of this area, because what it does, it allows you access to the brake fluid reservoir. The reason why you want access is when you are compressing the calipers or pushing them back, fluid, if it is too high, you may build a lot of pressure and it may overflow here. So you want to open this, and when you are pushing back your calipers in terms of installing new pads, your brake fluid will rise up here. You just want to keep an eye out on that because you don't want it to spill out. So make sure that you have full access to your brake fluid reservoir. Here is going to be your front brakes. This is the main caliper, and what I did was I turned the wheel all the way to the left. What that does is it gives you more room to put a breaker bar in here so that you can actually remove the caliper bolts. I'm going to show you a few things. You're going to see this wire here. That is your brake wear sensor that you do need to remove. You've got your brake line holder here. I do recommend that you loosen this because you're going to pull this caliper off and let it hang. But make sure that when you're allowing it to hang, it is connected to something because you do not want it freely hanging. Overall, the front brake is pretty easy. You'll see this pin here, and you've got one down here. What you're going to use is just tapping rod that you can put through here to push this pin out, because it will be pushed out here as well as here. Or I'm sorry, here. And when you are removing this, be careful because you do have this retaining clip that keeps your pads in. So the moment that you push this one out, this pad may pop out. You don't want it to pop out into your eyes. So make sure that you are potentially holding this down as you pop this pin out. Once this assembly here is removed, you can actually pull the pads out. So you've got one pad here, you've got another pad here. So those will pull out. The difficulty that you may run into is if you have stepped on the brake, obviously the pads are going to be compressed onto the rotor. You need to find some way to kind of push the pads out a little bit. If you have a piston compressing tool, you could put it theoretically in between these pins here, push out on the pads like that, and then you can pull it out. So this you want to go ahead and do. I'm going to show you the caliper retaining bolts. You've got it right, there's one right there, and then there's one all the way down there. Those are going to be your caliper holding bolts, which holds the caliper onto the knuckle. So make sure that you go ahead and remove that. Let me go ahead and add, with the rotor removal, you do have a rotor retaining bolt that you want to go ahead and remove off. And what that does is it unsecures the rotor. Now, the challenge with getting the rotor off is if you have an older vehicle with high miles, this rotor may be stuck on the main hub or the knuckle quite well. So you're going to have to, I hate to say it, you do have to take a mallet to get the rotor off. I recommend taking a rubber mallet and just hitting the very edges of it all the way around until it frees itself from the knuckle. You can see that I have the caliper off. You'll see that I use two U-hooks or S-hooks just to hang it so that there's no stress on the brake line. I did go ahead and remove the rotor retaining bolt here, and you can kind of see a couple markings here. I just used my mallet and hit it 2 or 3 times to break that seal loose. Now you guys are probably asking, why am I replacing the rotors? Now the rotors, my specific rotors, they started to pit, and what I mean by that is you can actually feel a little lip here. Once you feel that lip, you know that your rotors are starting to get thinner, and there is a BMW measurement amount, or kind of like a minimal thickness that they require. So I went ahead and replaced the rotor because of the pitting here. Now what we'll go ahead and do is we'll put the new rotor on. Keep in mind, the rotors that I bought from Brakenetics, they are side specific because they are vented as well as machined to a specific direction. You want to make sure that you get the side on correctly. Now if it's just simply a blank like this here, they're actually, let me step back. They're, even with these, they are side specific, because if you take a look here, you do have grooves inside which are vented. And the reason why you have vents there is to cool the rotors down. So make sure that you do put the rotors on the correct side. So I will go ahead and put the rotor on. I'll put the retaining bolt here. That's going to be 19 Newton meters, and I did at actually 10 foot-pounds. So you can go ahead and do that. We're going to clean up this caliper inside. There are going to be your pistons. Now you do need to have a piston retracting tool like this. What you'll do is you'll put it in here to push back those pistons, because when you put new brake pads in, they will not fit unless you push those back. And then also remember, up on top, you want to check that brake fluid to make sure that it's not pouring out of that reservoir. Now I'm getting ready to put in the brakes, or the brake pads I should say. What we'll go ahead and do, I have the caliper on. I put the caliper pins or the bolts back on. We're going to torque them to 110 Newton meters. From there, I'm going to clean this area up so that the pads are able to slide in, and I will lubricate them with brake pad grease or lube that sometimes it is recommended. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now that the pads are in, I'm going to put the retaining pad pin bolt in here, as well as here. Also that clip, which is this guy right here. Now if you take a look with these pins here, I did clean it up a little bit. I will go ahead and use my caliper grease, very light coating on it, so that it does go in here, and I did also use it on my pads. So we'll get those in. The retaining bolts again were torqued down. Everything looks good at this point, and we'll go ahead and get everything together and make sure that wire there, that is your brake wear sensor. We're going to pop it right in here. The retaining pin as well as the pressure plate here for the brake pads are in. You can also see the wear sensors in. Everything is hooked back the way it should be. You are done with the front brake rotor as well as the pad replacement. Now you'll see that little red dot. I left it there so you guys can see it does say left driver's side, so that you know you have the rotor on the correct side. For your rear brakes, most cars, including BMWs that are modern, they have an electronic emergency braking system where the electronics actually drives a mechanism to essentially tighten your emergency brake. So there's no way to physically turn it. What you actually need to do is you need to put your electronic parking brake into a service mode. Now for myself, I use the iCarSoft. This is going to be the CR Max BT. You don't necessarily need this one, but you do need to have some type of system that puts your electronic brake into parking mode, and it has to be done correctly. You do not want to mess around with the electronic brake and try to manually do it yourself. I've heard of some people that what they end up doing is they try to turn it, they turn it the wrong way, and that whole piston comes out, and at that point you have messed up your electronic parking brake. So make sure you have some type of scanner or a device that I had there that will put your emergency parking brake into service mode. Once you're done with the rear brake pad change, you can actually use the same device and disable or re-engage your electronic brake. Here is going to be your rear brake assembly. A few things. This is going to be your retaining clip. You need to go ahead and remove that. You've got your caliper, and here is your caliper carrier. The caliper sits on the carrier. You've got two bolts, one here, and then there's accompanying one down here. The way you access it, you're going to pull this little plug out, and you're going to stick an Allen in there. And what that does is it removes the bolt here and here, allowing you to take this caliper off. Now, before you do that, a few other things you need to kind of disengage. This is your brake line. You want to go ahead and loosen that. You're going to see this one here as well as that one right there. You want to loosen those to remove your brake line, and the reason being is it gives you a lot more play in terms of distance to pull this caliper off. And what you end up doing is kind of similar to the front. You're going to let the caliper hang, but make sure that you have something that holds it in place, because you do not want this brake line to be stressed in any way. Now, the carrier itself, it's a little difficult to see, but there's one bolt right there, and then there's one below it. Those are going to be your carrier bolts. So make sure that you remove that. Similar to the front, you have your rotor retaining bolt. You remove that, and then you remove your rotor. With the caliper, carrier, and rotor off, you've got a couple of things that you need to do to prepare for your pads. You see I hung it, no problem at all there. Here is your rear piston. You need to have some type of tool like this one right there. What it does is it sits in these little grooves and it pushes that piston back. Now, when I had mentioned you have to have a device that electronically retracts this and puts it in the service mode, it actually already did that. So with this tool here, all it does is it pushes this back even further so that you can get your new pads in. What I'll do now is I'm going to put the rotor on. I'll put the carrier, which is right there, and the caliper back on here, and on with the pad change. Rear rotors and brakes are completely done here. I went ahead and put the clip back. Everything is all torqued as it should be. The carriers themselves, the bolt is going to be 30 Newton meters plus 90-degree turn, because it is a torque to yield bolt. And then you have the bolts that hold the caliper onto the carrier. That's going to be 30 Newton meters. And then the final one, similar to the front, you've got the retaining bolt for the rotor. That's going to be 16 Newton meters. So we are done. I went ahead and put all of the wiring, locking mechanisms back in, and the rear rotors and pads are done. With the rotors and the brake pads change completed on the X2, the final step in this procedure is you need to perform what is called a bed-in process of the pads. A high-level overview what you're really doing is you're breaking down kind of the initial organic layer of the pads as well as the rotors and making it a nice mating surface between the two, which increases your stomping power. The correct way to do a bed-in process is, one, you need to find a nice long stretch of roads where you can get up to relatively quick speeds and do constant braking on your vehicle. So what you do is you speed up to about 30 to 40 miles an hour and you hit the brakes using about 50% braking force, but do not come to a complete stop. It's kind of like you get to a rolling stop and you want to complete between 5 and 7 repetitions of that. After that, you want to go ahead and do between 60 and 70 miles an hour, and this is where you apply a whole lot more braking force. And that ranges anywhere from about 80 to 90%, but do not hit ABS. You do the same thing 5 to 7 times again. Once again, you do not come to a complete stop. So you kind of get it to a rolling stop and keep on going to the very next one, because you want to build that heat and burn that organic layer off of the brake pads as well as the rotors. Finally, on your drive home, you want to try to stay off of your brakes. Best time to do it is probably nighttime or early in the morning when there's no cars around or where it's relatively safe for you guys to perform that. So that's going to be your variation of the bed-in process. I just completed the bed-in process, and if you take a look, you see that the pads have really glazed off the rotor real well. They're smoking, which is good. That's what you want. That's going to be your rear. Going over to the very front, you got to see it's also smoking, which is nice. And it's really created a nice glaze on the rotors. That's when you know you've done a good job of bedding in your pads. With the brake job completed, I do hope that you found this video useful. If you guys do have any questions, comments, or inputs on my process, make sure you leave a comment below. I'll definitely answer the questions or reply to your comments that you have. Overall, the job in itself on the X2, it isn't bad. The pads performed very well as the rotors from Brakenetics. The break-in process you saw was exceptional. There was a nice glaze all over the rotors, and the stomping power definitely felt good. There are a couple of very important things that I missed in the process that I did want to go ahead and share with you guys. If you are replacing your rotors, I highly recommend on the hub itself, you take a nice pad or some type of abrasive pad. You want to clean some of that dust as well as rust that may have accumulated over the years, and give just the mating surface a nice contact on both so that you've got a nice flat surface for the rotor to sit on. Once you've got that retaining bolt on, take your rotor and kind of spin it if you can. You might have to put your car in neutral and just spin the rotors. Make sure that it's not wobbling back and forth and that it's straight when you're kind of rotating it, that again it does look nice and straight. That way you're going to be assured that you've got no vibrations or any complications when you're doing your test drive. I do want to go ahead and thank you guys for stopping by and checking out another video of mine. If you do find this video helpful, give me a couple thumbs up, like the video, and if you have not already, I would greatly appreciate you hitting that subscribe button and sticking around for more future content on my X2 as well as other vehicles that I may be working on. Until the very next time, my automotive fanatic family, this is Peter, your automotive fanatic, signing off.